So, let's go. Matauranga Māori. So it spans Māori knowledge, culture, values, rituals, practices, and a Māori worldview. And although it was generated independent of other knowledge systems, including what we might know as science, nevertheless, much of it was generated using the scientific method. And I'll touch on that in just a little bit. But it has been disregarded by the scientific community because it seemed to be more myth and legend, claiming kind of fantastic and implausible creatures like taniwha to explain things. And so it tended to be seen as quaint and to be acknowledged because it was of an indigenous peoples, but not really of any value. What people like myself and others have demonstrated that the knowledge actually is, much of it is empirical in nature, and in fact we can show it's highly accurate and highly precise and extremely reliable. But then it's been codified, consistent with the Māori worldview, often in story form, and I know there's a few teachers in here, in fact if we've ever kind of read stories to people, we know that stories are one of the best forms of passing information down through generations. So much matauranga has been codified in story form, or in song, or in chant. But we can show, and I'll use the maramataka a little bit later on as an example for how that knowledge can be precise and accurate and highly reliable. But the knowledge isn't just in the spoken form. So this is an image of Umutahi Marae. This is in Matata, which is a small township to the west of Whakatane. And the Tarawera River flows, or maybe a K just to the east of this. It used to flow right down through Matata and out to the bay. And this is one of the branches of Ngāti Tūwhare Toa. And this is the Wharenui Umutahi, and I have the permission of the Marae Committee to use this image for these kind of talks. So I don't whakapapa from here, I suppose, that's the main point I'm making. So there's a design to this. I'm sure when all of you saw it, you said, oh, that's a whare, that's a Māori marae whare, Because that design is almost ubiquitous in its basic principles throughout Aotearoa New Zealand. So that's knowledge. What's even more interesting is that this design and the construction techniques outperform most 19th and 20th century building techniques for earthquake resilience. And that it even, this design outperformed many kind of more standard, what you might call house construction techniques following the 1886 eruption of Mount Tarawera, where sadly most of the lives lost they took shelter in a hotel, but those who sheltered in whare were okay. So that's knowledge. And then these things weren't constructed using nails. They were constructed using kind of interlocking and lashing techniques. And, so the type of timber that you would use was knowledge. But even, it wasn't just, a particular species of tree. For the tahuhu, the ridgepole, which takes a lot of the weight of the rafters, you would go and look for a tree growing on a certain side of a slope because it would grow up. If there was wind growing there, or if it was slightly cooler, there would be a pre-tensioned beam. Now, if there's any engineers in the room, you know that pre-tensioned and pre-stressed concrete now was one of the amazing discoveries of maybe the 20th century. Well, this has already been incorporated into the design of whare. You would pick timber that had already spring-loaded tension built into it. So that's knowledge, not just encyclopedic knowing the tree, but that you would select the right tree for the job. And then there are other construction materials in here. There's a bit of concrete, that's pretty modern. Sorry team. This would have been just a kind of a wooden floor originally. And there were ropor rushes for the insulation. They've got good thermodynamic performance. Then the tukutuku panels were in that, and they were just for a bit of aesthetics. And then the colours as well. And sure, this is probably Rosine's Rusty Red, and I don't know, Dulux Wonderful White, something like that. But these colours, these colour palettes are traditional colour palettes. And from geothermal areas you can find all of these colours. The red is kind of oxidised forms of iron. The white is a clay, different types of clays. Kaolinite is one popular one. And then the black can be found in some of those geothermal places, as well as anoxic areas like a repo, a wetland, or in a harbour, where you get that really kind of, just underneath that top surface, you get that really dark mud. There were other colours as well, but they weren't so common. There was a yellow colour you could get from some clays, and also from the pukatea tree. I understand there was a blue clay from up near Pukepoto up in Northland, but these were the most ubiquitous colours. So there's knowledge in colour, and knowing where to find the colour. In Auckland we didn't have much geothermal activity, but if you go to those sedimentary rocks around places like St Heliers and Kohimarama, and on the east coast bays and Takapuna and those places, if you pick out some of the yellower layers and then burn them, they turn that colour. You're oxidising the iron once again. I understand that there was a practice of also throwing seawater on there, which used to make it a more brilliant red. So there's knowledge in that. There's knowledge in the carving. The carver had to know how to carve. That knowledge had to be passed on. And then the carvings themselves, if you understand the code, that's a codification of knowledge in the carving form. These are all people. There's Umutahi up there on the Teko Teko. I don't know who these others are on this side. And my apologies, that's Lizzie. She was our honours student working with us on a project. She'll be horrified to know the numbers of talks which she's featured in for this is such a magnificent image. And then maybe just one final piece of information about matauranga, what knowledge is and how knowledge can be used and how knowledge can be kind of accessed by people like myself. You know, I wasn't there when this was built, I wasn't there when the design was put together, but I can read into what the knowledge is telling us. This was sited in an area adjacent to places that experience flooding events quite frequently. But this one was sited in an area where there was never a chance that it would be flooded, because it was based on the knowledge of an understanding of the way that stream behaved, and I'll touch a bit more on that a little bit later on. So matauranga Māori is that knowledge, and it includes the culture, includes the values, it includes the worldview. And it's not just in song and oral form. Now I've talked on this thing called worldview for a bit.